Winston, did you have fun today? I had a lot of fun. This is Winston's roadmap to success. So basically, he didn't really have any rules, and I think that when one of his guardians, the male, goes out of town, I think that he thinks that his job is to take over the male leadership role, as if his female can't handle it the female of the house can't handle it herself, which she is very capable of. But basically, I think it was because he didn't have any rules or structure. He was able to tell the humans what to do. They were petting him for doing kind of things they don't like. There are just a lot of common mistakes a lot of my clients make. So I like the guardians to get in the habit of only petting him with a purpose. So instead of petting him for no reason like I am now, we ask him to sit. Once he sits, we pet him under his chin and say the word sit. Or if he's already sitting, we ask him to lie down, and this word crash. Or, come to us, or just do something to change his state. After a while, he's going to come and start sitting in front of us as his way of asking for attention. Then we want to make sure we reach over and pet him and say sit. When we're giving a command word, we want to say just the command word, not good sit, not Winston sit, just sit, and not sit, just sit. Say it normally. I also like the guardians to practice what I call passive training, which is basically rewarding the dog for desired actions and behaviors. So we've been doing it for his crash because he doesn't like to lay down on command. So every time he lays down, we pet him and say crash. Every time he comes to us, we pet him and say come. Every time he takes the first bite of his food, we say grub, chow, feast, whatever the word is. That means he has permission to eat. When he gets down off the couch, we pet him and we say the word off. So what we want to do is basically anything that he does that's a repeatable or desired action, we're going to pet and we're going to say just that command word. I call this passive training. It's a great way to train your dog. It's a lot slower than traditional training, but if your dog doesn't like to lie down, you can't manipulate him into it. Every time he lays down, you pet him. This is just the same thing that we do when our kid gets a first A. We put the report card or the test up on the refrigerator so that everybody in the family sees it. We want to let them know that we really appreciate and respect what you did, and we're rewarding you for doing so. Let me see. I'd also like the guardians to use the escalating consequences to disagree with him. He responded very, very well to them. So if you forgot what petting with a purpose is, passive training is, or escalating consequences, those are the keywords that I use. Usually we'll see them in bold on our website. There we go, crash. And that means that you can search for them. So go to go to dogonproblems.com, click dog training tips. In the search box on the right side of the page, type in escalating consequences. And you get a write-up from other clients where it has a video where I talk specifically about those. In this write-up, we have the video where we talked about the rules for a structured walk. And as we saw in the two videos above us, we instituted the rules, we made sure he was calm before we left, and the guardians had a great walk with him. And they'll probably enjoy walking with him and take him for more walks, the better that he behaves at this. Now, we also went over a couple exercises. One of the things we did was teaching him to focus. I'd like the guardians to practice for the next 2 weeks, at least twice a day for each guardian. We have about 10 to 12 treats. At first, it's going to be 1 second, 1 second. Make sure that you're using you have a right angle turn, and that you're making sure the dog is looking at you and the treat the whole time. So don't kind of go like this with the treat, up and then straight towards the dog. Now first it's 1 second, 1 second for all 12 treats. Eventually it's going to be 1 second, 2 seconds on the second movement only for all 12 treats, and both guardians. And then maybe after 2 or 3 of those, then we go to 3 seconds on that second movement. Eventually we're going to work our way up to 20 seconds. So it's 1, very slowly. Now he kept on getting up out of a sit. I showed a version of this exercise to the guardians off camera, which will help him stay in a sit. Another thing I like the guardians to do is practice putting him in a sit in LAY and staying in a sit or LAY for a second. So we put him in a sit, hold the treat up. At first maybe just 1 extra second, then give it to him. Second time maybe 2 extra seconds. Work ourselves up to the point where he says sit. He stays in a sit for up to 10 seconds before we start the motion of giving him that treat. And don't do it too slow, just don't do it too fast, but we want him to stay in the sit, stay in the crash, whatever the position is, for a little period of time. The guardians could practice that if you maybe just grab 10 pieces of kibble, get up here, and I'm going to the bathroom, I get up, take a half step, stop, tell him to sit, give him a treat and say the word sit. Whenever you treat, make sure you're saying the command word after the treat goes on the mouth, not touches the lips, not before. And then take another step, sit, give him a treat. The more that we do this, the easier it's going to be. Dogs don't generalize well, so the more we can practice, have them practice things in different areas, the better at it they will get. We also want to practice on the walks. So I would bring a handful of the high-value tricky trainers. Now, at first, he wasn't that interested. He was more interested in the walk. After he gets more comfortable walking in a more relaxed walk without being so crazy excited, you should be able to get him to take treats. So then and don't force it. If you offer him and he turns away, then just he's not ready for it. But eventually you want to get to the point where when you're walking, stop between everybody's driveway and just let him sit, give him a treat, say sit, and then keep on walking. This way, after a while, when he's walking, he's like checking you out, watching your feet to see where you're at. Let me see. Always walk through the dog so the dog gets used to deferring and moving around the humans. Always follow through. So if we ask Winston to do something and he doesn't do it, we're going to get up and follow him until he does the thing. So I tell him to sit, and he gets up and walks that way. I'm going to follow him. Once he goes in the other room, I would close the door behind me. When he finally gets himself back against the wall, then I would bark out the original order, sit. As soon as he sits, I would turn and walk away. I wouldn't reward at that point because I had to make it happen. But he has to understand that from now on, you're willing to burn the energy to get up and follow through no matter what it is. So this is why it's helpful to practice these things at times where you're not in a rush. I'd like the guardians to practice leashing him up in the way that I described off camera. And it's basically we're going to stop anytime the dog moves in front of us or starts getting excited. We want to practice leashing him up about 4 or 5 times for every one time we take him out for a walk. And it's helpful to do this at times when you don't have any intention of taking him for a walk, so you're not frustrated that he's not cooperating. I have 2 minutes to kill. Let's practice this. And if he gets excited, we put the leash back and go back to what we're doing. He's like, oh man, I messed up because I was too excited. They stopped. Their interest in taking me for a walk subsided. So in the future, I better stay calmer. A lot of people confuse excited for happy when it comes to dogs. Excited is an unbalanced state of mind. If I won the lottery on my way here, I would not give these clients a very good session because I'm thinking about how many boats I can buy. I'm in a happy state of mind, but it's not a balanced state of mind. Same thing with, remember, anytime anything the dog is doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. So if he's nervous and we pet him, we're going to make him continue to be nervous. If he whines and we pet him, he's going to continue to whine for attention. If he's barking and all worked up, and that's going to cause a response as well and continue doing that. Now remember with the escalating consequences to use the hiss with good timing. So we could arrange to have family or friends come by to visit, and when they do and they park, they text us, and then they get up and they walk this way and this way by the 2 windows. So Winston gets to see them doing it, but before it happens, they text us, so we're ready to do it. We got to wash our hands. We finish up our homework or whatever it is we're doing, so that we're able to give the dog our full attention immediately. Remember, when it comes to the hiss, the timing is everything. You have to catch them before they do the wrong thing, not after. Once they're worked up, you're going to have to go to the 2nd or 3rd or even 4th consequence. Let me see, what else? What are the other things? We taught the dog to stay. This is something else. You can go to Doggone Problems and click on the dog training tips and search for stay. I teach the stay for 3 Ds. First for duration, then for distance, then for distraction. Duration up to 5 minutes, then distance with the dog with the dogs eventually the human going into the other room. And make sure we give the dog the release word at the end. So the first maybe week that we do it, every time we get done, we toss the treat off the side and they say release when they touch it with their lips. By doing this and getting the dog to stay consistently, then we can have the dog practice being alone. Separation anxiety is a panic state that the dog goes into when it's suddenly thrust into being alone. Most of us don't realize we pet and love the dog 24/7 when we're here, and then when we leave, it goes to 0. So I'm going from 100 to 0. That's a huge gulf to navigate. So instead, what we do is put the dog in a sit, and then we practice practice having him stay while we go to the bathroom. Just going for a minute out of sight, but the dog knows we're still in the house, so they're comfortable. And eventually we do it where we go in the bedroom and change clothes, or we're going back there for a quick phone call. We want to gradually elongate or lengthen the amount of time that he has to stay in here in a sit or a stay while you're home. That will help him better prepare him so he's not going from 100 to 0. He's going from 100 to 90 to 80 to 70. Eventually we can do it where we go outside, close the door, wait 1 second, come back in. Now this wouldn't necessarily be for the stay. You could do it for the stay as well, but for this case, if he still has separation anxieties, what I would do is I would have him in here, put him in a stay or just in a sit, walk outside, turn around, come right back inside, sit down. Next time you do it, be gone for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Maybe then go from 5 to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 15. You're going to gradually lengthen the amount of time, but don't do it arbitrarily. And when we were doing the stay, we got up to like 15 seconds, and at about 13 seconds, he got up out of the stay. So that was his indication that he's not ready to go beyond 13 seconds. So when we're doing those things, whenever a dog fails, we always want to take 1 step back, help the dog practice the previous step a couple times, and then take another step forward. This is the same way we learn. If we're not ready for something, we do remedial study, get our firm foundation, then we move on to the next step. Let me see, so practice for the stay, I'd like to have the guardians practicing that in very short intervals. Eventually we can get up to 5 minutes, but I'd like to have each guardian trying to practice that, set a goal for trying to practice that 5 times each a day. again, maybe a minute a pop. So you're only talking about 5 minutes. With focus exercise, you're talking about maybe 7-10 minutes a day that you're spending practicing with the dog, but you're sprinkling out throughout the day. And again, when you're doing these things, make sure you do them in different locations, different times of the day, with the TV on, with TV off, with the AC on, some bacon sizzling in the pot, some music playing, neighbor fighting. We want to do it in all these different variables so he is prepared for real world situations. Now, on the walk we did great. We didn't film it. We actually found a dog that we walked by, and he walked by with one of the guardians, and he normally is lunging and growling and barking and panic, trying to get the other dog to move away. He didn't make a peep. They walked right by. So it's a great example of how Winston has this in him. He's just going to need his guardians to take over that leadership role in his mind by consistently enforcing the rules, using the escalating consequence, and practicing the exercises we went over. Another thing we went over was teaching him to use the dog bed, which we're going to call Ring. Now, I would suggest that we just go to Walmart or somewhere, get a cheap towel, get a light colored one, a light cream or a white initially. Right now he's marking on things, and again, this is thing related to him thinking he has the authority position. So some of the rules we went over to help him start to identify as a follower: not being allowed in the furniture for at least a month or as long as the problem's still going on, not being able to go out a door first, having to sit actually before they go out a door, not being allowed in this section of the room when people are eating, so we might put a piece of tape down across so he knows where the line is, not being allowed in the kitchen when we're cooking in the kitchen, and having to wait for permission that's in his to eat food that's waiting in his bowl. The guardian's been free feeding him because he doesn't eat very well, and this is a very common misconception a lot of people have, is the more access the dog will have to it, the more they'll take it. It's the exact opposite. For us, if I have access to something every day, it's no longer valuable or unique. It's when I only have access. If I'm on a diet and I can only eat pizza once a month, man, I look forward to that. Same sort of thing for him. In the wild, there's no refrigerator or restaurant for him to go to if they don't have a successful hunt. He goes to bed hungry. So we put food in the bowl. He has 3 minutes to eat it, but as soon as, hold on a second, buddy, we're almost done. As soon as he walks away from the bowl, that's his way of saying we're done. We pick up the bowl, we dump the food out and put the empty bowl back down. It's important to put the empty bowl back down. And then he doesn't eat again until the next meal. If the dog goes longer than 3 days without eating, and let the guardians call me, most dogs, within 2 days, they're eating happily every time the guardians do. Feed them. Make sure the guardians are eating something first. Now, if you're going to go out to eat and you're not going to eat a real meal, you don't have to eat a real meal. Just grab a chip or a cracker or a carrot, something that you can eat in 5 or more bites, preferably something that's crunchy. And then once you're done, let him go over and take that first bite. Yes, I know, buddy, we're almost done. And then when he takes the first bite, say the word grub, chow, or feast, or whatever you want, to use passive training to help him understand that his command word is grub, chow, feast, or whatever it is. All right, is there anything? The drop. Another thing you can search for on my website. What we want to do is when he has a low value item, the duck or any of the toys he's allowed to have, not on the couch. Couch gives him status. We're just going to hold it in front of his nose. He'll try to take the object or the treat with the object in his mouth. Wait for him to drop it. As soon as he drops it, then we just pop the treat in his mouth and say the word drop. We don't touch the object, and he gets the object back. So for his perspective is every time the human asks me to drop something, they make my situation better. They give me a great tasty treat, and I got the original item back anyways. And this is another thing that we want to do for resource guarding, which I don't think he's a resource guarder, and I think that with the rules and structure the guardian's going to put in place, I think that's going to take care of this problem, but occasionally it gets growly. We try to take something when he's under the table or here. Again, that would be a great time to practice the drop with lower value items. But if he is growling and he won't drop, then just basically take note of when he growls. If you're walking towards him and you get to 3 feet away and that's when he starts growling, then I would walk away, go get a high value treat, walk back towards him again, but this time at 4 feet I would stop, toss a treat towards him so that he can get it without getting up, and then turn and walk away. So it's the same principle is, basically if the humans ask me to drop something or they approach and I have something, they're not trying to take my stuff, they'll make my situation better. Now at first it's at 4 feet, and eventually should we go to 3.5 feet, then 3 feet, then 2 feet, then 1 feet, then eventually have him taking the treat right off your hand. And if he growls at any point, then back up a half a step, practice that other half step a couple times, and eventually you'll be able to go back to doing it. All right, I'm probably forgetting some things, Winston. Am I forgetting anything? He's like, yeah, I'm forgetting, let me go. All right, well, if the guardians have any questions, I want them to call or text me. Like I tell all my clients, I'm always available to you. Texting me is the fastest way to reach me. I am on the go a lot, and email is the slowest way to reach me. I don't want you to wait as a client. Winston, you did very good, buddy. Can you say goodbye to the people? This is Winston's Roadmap to Success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.